What got me out of bed every single day was I felt like I was making a difference. Our philosophy of going after big companies and the design really helped. So like Nike was one of our key clients. And I think it's kind of nice to just like run ideas by people because, it is kind of lonely at the top. I miscalculated on how much that meant to them. I mean, I had people coming in my office literally crying, going, what the what are you doing? Running a business just takes risk. And my wife would look at me and she's like, what? We're taking out another home loan to pay a factory in China?
You've found the right partner. There's probably a sense of relief, some excitement. Walk me through the next 6 months.
Yeah, I would say that both parties would say that it didn't go well for the first 6 months. I'd say probably for the first 12 months, it really didn't go well. Catalyst was our livelihood as a family. My wife wasn't working. We had 3 young kids. We just bought a new house. This was our livelihood.
Welcome to the Sinclair Podcast, where we share real-world experiences, wisdom, and the honest struggles of entrepreneurs to help you navigate and scale your business with confidence.
Hey everyone, I got a huge favor to ask. If you're getting value from this podcast, tap that 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple. The more we grow, the more leaders and entrepreneurs we can help. Thank you for being a part of this. Now let's get started. Tom, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it. You might not even know this, but early days we come from the same industry, the brand and merch world. And early days when you joined the called the buying group or software group, Facilis. I mean, you guys were, you were the company that a lot of people looked up to. It was by size, capabilities, and just like a really cool marketing forward company. So, we talked about you a lot back in the day, and I think we had a couple opportunities to meet, but it's been so good to reconnect through Exec to Coach and just being able to have more conversations. And I'm really excited to share your story today, which is unique and just full of amazing experience and advice that I think is really going to hit home with any entrepreneur. So thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's great to reconnect as well.
Yeah, for sure. Why don't you give me the short notes on Catalyst? What made you guys you?
That's a great question because everybody always wants like their differentiation. Back in the day, literally back in 1985 when I started in this business. My old boss named Russ Woodleaf, a lot of people will know him who have been in the industry. He was very focused on design. And so he hired this graphic design professor out of UCLA to be the creative director at Jack Nadell and started this whole new division, basically, that was like, I don't even remember what we called it. It was like the creative group. But what I learned from him and school was design was something that a lot of people weren't doing. And so, lo and behold, when I went out on my own, I really focused on design and I learned a ton. I learned a ton from Russ Woodleaf. I learned a ton from our creative director. His name's Toby Cowan. The guy's like 80 years old now, and I told him I couldn't be friends with him anymore because I can't have an 80-year-old friend, but he's just a wonderful individual. And he and I are like best friends to this day. And I hope if he listens to this, he'll probably laugh. But I mean, he taught me everything I know. But what I did learn is for Catalyst, our differentiation was design, and we sort of said to ourselves and even our clients like, hey, we're actually more of a design company in the promotional products world versus being a promotional products company with design. And what that design did, it was just something that a lot of people weren't doing, and even to this day, a lot of people aren't doing it. They don't really truly understand what design can bring to the table, but it just led to us to be a little bit more creative and just be a little different than some of the other folks that we from our competitors' standpoint.
I think you're downplaying some of the work you guys did. Name a few clients you had the pleasure of working with over the years.
Yeah, that was the other thing is that, our philosophy of going after big companies and the design really helped. So like Nike was probably one of our key clients, and they respected design.
Small brand to have on the portfolio.
Yeah, and they understood design, and so like we kind of went towards that. Starbucks, was very design centric. Southwest Airlines was very design centric. So these companies that, Nintendo, very design centric, Pokemon, very design centric. So these clients that we were working with really appreciated the design that we brought to the table, and it was different. It wasn't, they couldn't get that with other promotional product companies back in the day.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think that the thing I want to spend most of the time on today is talking about UX in the company, and we can go on that after. But before we do that, when did you start to think about, or in the back of your head, saying, you know what, I'm considering selling, or I may want to sell, or maybe it was I'm going to sell this thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I thought I was going to have this company for my entire life. I mean, literally, I just felt extremely fortunate for what we had. And but all of a sudden, after I don't know, maybe 14, 15 years or so, we were growing so quickly that we needed cash, and we also needed capabilities that we didn't really have. Like we said we had them, but I mean, if somebody, if you really looked underneath the trunk of the car,
It's your
there'd be
scrappy
two mice in there.
entrepreneurial answer.
Yeah.
Of course we can do that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we go back and we're like, how the hell are we going to do that? But the big thing
What were
was
some of those capabilities?
mainly company stores and doing
Okay.
like in-house fulfillment and company store programs. And we were just about 40% of what we were doing was custom product being made overseas. So you can imagine doing 40% where, we had to do a 30% deposit, then we had to pay the factory before they ship it, and that's 26 days on the water, and then it gets to the client, and then the client pays you 60 days later. Like that spread from a cash
Yeah.
standpoint was really, really tough. And we were growing, it wasn't that we weren't growing. We were almost growing too fast. And almost being too good, and we really think about it. So I had to look for a partner that could help us in the company store area, because we needed it sooner than we could do it ourselves. And I know that there was a lot of companies out there that have their own company store program that we could maybe just launch onto. So it was really the kind of looking more for a partnership, and I spent about a year just looking around, and then I fell on Halo. And what I liked about Halo is Mark Simon, who was there, said to me, he's like, "Hey, I don't care what you guys." Literally, he said to me, "You can call yourself Jesus Christ. I don't really care." He's like, basically, you could be Catalyst, and you can just be powered by Halo, and we'll fund the business. And so that was like almost a relief to me, because I was like, oh, because I felt like Catalyst had a really good brand, and I didn't really want to give that up. And they could Halo can sort of be behind the scenes, and it would be more of like not really even a merger, but just kind of like partnering with somebody to give you more power, And so that was the vision. I would say that that vision didn't come through as quickly as we wanted, mainly because of some of the things we were going to talk about. I know a little bit further on here is there's just so many things that I did wrong in terms of how to sell your company and how to merge in with a company that I want to share that with people, because if you are thinking about selling your company, there's lots of things that I've said to you before of like I could write a book on how not to sell your company. But that's kind of like the long story of what was going through my head and why I wanted to sell. It wasn't really like wanting to sell. It was like just continuing to bring the solutions to our clients that they were asking for that we couldn't. And so that kind of scared the daylights out of me. I was like, because I literally had one company was like, hey, I need you to run our company store, but if you can't run the company store, then we're going to find somebody else to do it. And that's going to not be really good for you guys. It was that kind of a thing. So.
Yeah, and it seems to be that tipping point of this industry, and probably a lot of other industries have their own version of that. But it becomes, hey, you build. Someone gives you an opportunity to maybe half-ass some sort of store or program,
Yeah.
and then you all of a sudden get into this world that you gotta commit, or you gotta stay the same size or go a different path. And
Yeah.
I can definitely appreciate that position. And again, from what you're saying there, the risk increases for you. It's Tom funding it, a bank funding it, or someone else coming in, because your reputation's on the line, and for that matter, the risk for you and your family.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly right. And it's really interesting you talk about that. There's a great article, and I don't know if I can like publish it somewhere here, but it's an older
Yeah,
article, but
we'll throw
it's
it in the show notes after.
yeah, it was uh in the Harvard Business Review magazine, and it was about they talked about being in a place that's called nowhere land, because it was either you got to keep going or you got to slow down. But if you're kind of stuck in the middle, and they call it like no man's land, that's where you're going to run into trouble, and you're just going to die, you know. And so I remember reading that article, and then all of a sudden it happened to me, and it was like, there was times when we were running the business where we had to like make a leap, we like had to make an investment,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's hiring somebody or bringing on, maybe a small other capability or whatever. You make that investment, and you might lose money initially, but it's the investment to make more money down the road, right? And so this is, again, if we were like at this absolute turning point where it was like, well, I'm either got to go back to being a little bit more of a smaller company, or we're going to make this leap that says we're going to be working with, Fortune 500 companies and doing everything we can with them, and just make that leap, And so the only way really to make that leap, because I'd love it if I won the lottery, but I kept trying on the lottery and it didn't work for a couple of years, so I had to find a partner.
Not the ideal bet, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you sign the deal. You feel you've found the right partner. There's probably a sense of relief, some excitement. Walk me through the next 6 months and some of the lessons learned for you.
Yeah, I would say that both parties would say that it didn't go well for the first 6 months. I'd say probably for the first 12 months, it really didn't go well. And I would say, number one is that we both did not do a good enough job of sort of doing a due diligence on our operations. Like, we went from Facilis and we went to, their operations, right? And now all of a sudden, like, productivity just went downhill, and everyone's all angry because they have to learn a whole new system, but they got to get an order out, And I mean, we all know how this business is. It's like, clients need things going every time. You can't delay.
Yep.
So,
Go.
so really doing that due diligence of like their operations, not only like their order entry system, learning how to use that, like make sure everybody is like trained, ready to go before you switch. I mean, it sounds obvious, right? But it was like we just switched, and it was like way too fast. And they didn't do a lot of due diligence on us because we had a creative department, and we were charging internal charges on salespeople. We'd give them like a sort of a what do you call it? I guess a certain amount of dollars that they could spend, and then if they used up those dollars, then we charge it against their commissions. But like this company didn't know how to do that, and they didn't know how to treat our creative department, and we were doing orders with that like at 6, sometimes 8 different vendors, and the operations guy called me and he's like, what are you guys doing with all these vendors? This is crazy. We don't do this. And I was like, oh, shoot. Okay. Well, I'm not sure what we can do, So,
One of you's gonna have to figure it out, right?
yeah. So long story short, there's really an operational component to this of just understanding order entry, any unique things that you have, even kind of like the review process that you go into, the hiring process that you go to, any agreement you would have with clients. Just make sure like all of that is well understood first before and you can switch in terms of like becoming part of that company, but like don't let anybody know. You don't have to let everybody know, and just let that go on behind the scenes and learn it and just understand it before you kind of flip the switch, I think is probably the best thing to do. So that was, I would say that was like really, really hard. And it it cost me employees. It was a lot of angst on the other company that brought us on board too, because we were so different than they were operationally. I mean, we were a nightmare for them, when it really
Sure.
came down
And I
to
mean,
it.
you guys you're coming in as a small percentage of their business, but they're putting a ton of resources to you.
Oh yeah, and they're just looking, and so their people, they're a large company, and they're like, okay, who's this company that we just acquired? These guys are a pain in the ass,
Who's
and
this Tom guy? Yeah.
yeah, and so I'm not putting it on them or us. I think again, it was just really both of us just did not do a good enough job, I think, of doing that due diligence, on the operations, and also on the culture side of things. We were a West Coast kind of company, and this is a Midwest company. Values were a little bit different. How we talk to our customers were a little different. How we invoice our customers were different. Again, it just gets in that culture of just understanding their culture, understanding our culture, and make sure that the cultures are somewhat similar. I did not do a good enough job of that, and I was just so impressed with their capabilities, but I just did not take into account a lot of the detail stuff. My whole time was like, oh my God, we're going to be able to kill it with Nike because we can do this, do that. We can do the company store for T-Mobile. We can, we have the capability to really run the operation for the company store at Southwest Airlines. I was just thinking about that, and uh, yeah, and I think just in terms of operations, culture, and everything else. And I would say the
Yeah.
third thing there is um, how you tell your employees that we're going to be merging in with another company, because there's a
What was the
lot.
reaction?
Yeah, well, it was not good. In fact, people were crying, believe it or not, and
Wow.
they couldn't understand. They're just like, why would we ever do that? Like, why? I don't understand. Why would we ever sell? And I was like, we're not selling per se. We're just joining a company that can give us more capabilities to do what we're going to do. Um, and so again, for people out there that are thinking about selling their business, man, just spend a lot of time thinking about how your employees are going to take that, how you're going to word it to them, how you're going to bring it to them. Um, making sure that it's definitely more of a positive thing. Um, I miscalculated, which it surprised me a little bit, but I just miscalculated the employees. I mean, I knew we had a really great thing and people were very loyal. We had very low turnover. I mean, we had people were there working for years, that came in as interns, and that was their first job out of school, and they just loved the company. We had a great culture, and I miscalculated on how much that meant to them. I mean, I had people coming in my office literally crying, going, "What the fuck? Like, what are you doing? Like, how can you
That's
do
a
this?"
lot on you, right? That's heavy for you too.
Yeah, and it's and again, that's so those are some of the things that I think are really really important when uh when ended up happening after I was acquired. They acquired a few more companies going along, and I met with the CEO, and I just told him, I was like, hey, don't be in a hurry. Like, hey, their operations are different than what you're doing. Like before you pull that switch, make sure everybody's trained and ready to go. And so they, uh, and they ended up making like 5 acquisitions, I think, within 2 years. And I'm like, God, why couldn't I be the fifth acquisition instead of the first acquisition?
Yeah. I mean, hey,
Uh,
it sounds like you both learned a lot from that experience.
I think
Tom, take
so.
me to the moment where, call it your oh shit moment where you realized you perhaps didn't make the right decision.
Yeah, I would say, um, almost every day was an oh shit moment, to be honest with you. But I would say when it really came down to it, is when I lost like two or three of my best people, um, in sales, and support. And these people had worked for me for a super long time and were extremely loyal. and good quality people. And they were just like, I can't do this anymore, you know. Um, and I would say it was probably about 9 months in when that happened, and I started losing more and more people, and I was just realizing that like we have to change what's going on right now. And so, um, believe it or not, I mean, I got my people together. The company that acquired me with their people together, and was just like, hey, I I don't think this is working. I was almost like, I want out. Like, I don't think this is necessarily going to
Wow.
work. And I'm not sure if I really said those words, but I think, in my head, I'm like, God, this is just not working. And, to their credit, um, they realized what was going on. And, um, and they realized that, like, we're talking about Nike and T-Mobile and Starbucks. I mean, we're talking about very, very good brands that would look good in this company's portfolio, and we were messing that up. And so, although we were a small part of their business, I think the potential there, I think they certainly saw that. So, to their credit, they created like a whole group of people that just focused on Catalyst and did everything for us, made sure our orders were in, made sure things were being paid on time, made sure the customer was doing well. I mean, they just like carved out this group and said, okay, this is who you're going to report to, and they have, basically everything that they can do to make the decision on things, and that helped. That helped a ton. Um, and I would say things got turned around pretty quickly after that. And that was probably, yeah, 9 months to a year, that I went through hell. And uh, and then it probably took a good 6 months to make sure that it was like back on track, I would say. So, a good 18 months of me, because I know I look like I'm 110 years old after that whole thing right now, and I'm really only 60.
That took a couple years off your life, did it?
It did.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
Tom, that said, I mean, how did this impact life at home for you?
Oh boy, that's a great question. It was hard. There's just no doubt about it. Uh, and it was one of those things because, like, Catalyst was our livelihood as a family. I mean, not that my kids really cared, but like this was my wife wasn't working. We had three young kids. We just bought a new house. Um, I mean, like this was our livelihood, and so it was stressful.
Yeah.
And I had an extremely supportive wife. And I remember there was a time where she was going a little crazy with three kids trying to juggle homework, dinner, driving to soccer practice, and all of that. And so I remember we kind of sat down and I said, so like, when do you need me the most? Like, when do I need to be here the most? And she's like, basically between 4:30 and 8, and I don't care if I ever see you again.
Here's your window.
I was like, you know what? Okay. And so, and that was also the time, like I was helping coaching soccer and being involved with our kids as much as I possibly could. But, it was a time where like you're driving to soccer and then you get home and you're getting the homework, you're bathing the kids, making sure they get showers, and they got the homework going, you got to do all the dishes and everything else. And that's like the toughest time. I mean, if anybody has a family, if
Oh, it's
it's like,
draining. Yeah,
it's
it
hard.
is.
It's really, really hard. And none of our kids at that point had their driver's license yet, so we were just scrambling, with their parents and everything else. So, yeah, so it was certainly hard on the family. I would say my wife was super supportive, and she knew what was going on, and we just had to kind of power through and get through this. And I knew it wasn't going to last forever. So, and it came, and
Yeah.
at the end of the day, so this is like 7 years later after this acquisition. I look at the salespeople that we had, and I call them my salespeople because they are my salespeople, or they were, but they're now Halos. But they're doing like 3 times the amount of business they did when they were a Catalyst.
Wow.
I mean, and one gal is just doing a fantastic work. Like she was doing like, I don't know, maybe 3, 4 million, maybe 5 million with Catalyst, and she's now doing like over 20 million. And
That's
so,
incredible.
right, and so the bottom line is that when it's all said and done, it was the right decision and it was the right decision because we were able to keep those good clients, the Nikes and T-Mobiles and Pokemons of the world, and we were able to bring in. We had the finances to fund the orders, and we had the capabilities to help expand the business, and it did. And the salespeople, if you talk to them now, I bet you they'd say, yes, financially, it's been fantastic, and that we've been able to really, go deep within our clients. But I miss sort of that small company catalyst. That's probably what they'll say. But it was, at the end of the day, it was the right decision. But again, it was just kind of like how I went about it that made it really tough.
Yeah, an incredible learning experience, as you mentioned, for both sides, right? I'm sure Mark and his team learned a ton through this and could bring that value into all the other acquisitions that they're have continued to do.
Yeah. I mean, even to this day, when they hired or acquired a company in California, I think the company in California, after 2 years, is still on their own system. I don't think they've transferred over yet because they're still trying to get, like how that's going to affect the customer and how it's going to affect employees. And I think they've just done a really slow, methodical way to go. And I would say that, I mean, I don't know if this is exactly true, but it felt like the company that acquired me was they were acquiring more salespeople, like 1 or 2, 3 people, or 4 or 5 companies that they were more like salespeople per se. I think that we were probably like the true company that had a creative department. We had an HR department. We had we had finance. We had like all the departments together. I mean, we were like a full-on company, and I don't know if they had acquired that, as many people like that, like we were. So yeah, it's just an interesting time for sure.
Yeah. What are you most proud of when you think back to the Catalyst days?
That's a great question. I don't know if there's one thing. Can I give you a couple things? Because a couple things just
I
popped in
figured
my
there'd be
head.
more than one.
Well,
Absolutely.
one is that we got voted as like the best company to work for, and I didn't even know we signed up for that. Like a couple employees got together and signed up for it, and then we got that. I'm like, what? And so I'm really proud that it wasn't me doing that our employees felt like we needed to have that recognition, and they were really proud of that. So I think that was really, really cool. I would say that, and I think I'm right. I think we had 23 kids born while we were in business in 17, 18 plus years. And
That's
those
so
people
cool.
that had kids stayed with us, And so I'm really proud of that people could have a family, prioritize that, and have those kids. And I remember when my CFO came on board, who is one of my best friends to this day, is a wonderful man. But he came on board and he was like, hey, he's like, I was just looking at like for the demographics of our employees, and we at employees we had, I mean, I think we had 42, and about 4 of them were guys, and the rest were all women. And we also
Wow.
had the
No way.
philosophy of hiring right out of college. Like we rarely hired people with experience. We just found it, and there's a whole philosophy behind that, but we just found it better for us to hire people right out of school, right? And he was like, we got like 25 women who are like 26. He's like, in the next 5 years, they're probably all going to get married, start having kids. We're going to be in big trouble, and he was right, and so we made it work. But I totally remember that. And he was just like, what? My wife's always like, why are you hiring all these women? And I was like, well, because like the job description was being creative, understanding what's current, being empathetic, being very well organized.
Yeah.
A lot of those traits don't fall on it, guys.
Right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, not being prejudiced.
Smart
but,
move by you guys.
Yeah.
But we
So
are low, for sure.
Yeah. So I think that the best places to work were great. I would say that the having all those kids were really great. And I think if you talk to anybody at Catalyst, they'll tell you the culture was magical. That sounds sort of like a little bit crazy, but it was. I mean, there was a time there that like we were just clicking on all four wheels and things were going really smooth. People were getting along. We hired the right people. It was a good time. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's something to be really proud of.
Yeah.
Fast forward 7-8 years, you've got a consulting company. You're with an industry group, executive coach. Why consulting?
I had a lot of amazing people that really helped me in this business. A lot of mentors, and I felt that if there was a way for me to give back to this community and this ASI business, I wanted to do that somehow. I wanted to be, like this. I've told you, like this guy Russ Woodleaf and Toby Cowan. I mean, these guys were like just amazing individuals. Rod Brown. There's just a million people, and so I just thought, like, maybe there's a way I could give back. I love the business. I felt like I've made a lot of mistakes, and so I could really help people not make the mistakes I made. And
that's right.
Yeah, so it was just, I think it was a way for me to stay in the business. I still want to work. I didn't want to like leave the business necessarily. And it was an opportunity for me to, instead of working 80 hours a week, I could work 20 hours a week and still be involved with, friends and business colleagues that I know, and hopefully help people. And I would say that, if you talk to a few of the folks that I've worked with, I've made a big impact with them, either with them personally or with them part of their business or decisions they're making or operations we've done. And that's super gratifying for me. So yeah, it's, I hope I do this until I'm 95 years old, as long as people keep having me.
Yeah, you got a lot of, I think experience, wisdom. Yeah, I've said the same a lot of times. Say just, what not to do comes with a lot of advice, right? And there's something to be said about that. Is there a certain approach or philosophy you have when you're starting with clients as a consultant?
You mean in terms of their business or their
or just your approach?
Or?
Is it as much the individual you're working with? Is it the business? Where do you tend to find the most fulfillment or enjoyment? For you and the customer.
Well, I would say that I'd say that I have two probably areas of expertise that I think I'm pretty good at. One is sort of leadership, and that is like one-on-one with CEOs, and I think. And I think I put this in my LinkedIn, I always had a mentor, no matter what. I always had somebody, and I still have a mentor today, to this day. I still have a guy that I meet with, and it's awesome. And it's just great to have somebody to be a strategic sounding board. And so I can be that strategic sounding board for people who are CEOs or VPs or whatever. And I think it's kind of nice to just like run ideas by people because, it is kind of lonely at the top. So I do that, business coaching. And I would say the next is just business development, which is, it's kind of a big term, but I would throw creative as part of that because it's not just what you're showing, it's how you're showing it and just what it looks like. What level of creativity are you bringing to that? What are you doing from a differentiation standpoint, and how exactly are you showing that differentiation? What are the words that you're using? There's just a lot of detail that goes into that. So, the whole process of business development, I've been able to help clients sort of streamline that, make it a little bit more effective, enhance it just a little bit. And a lot of it comes with design too, of just like looking at their presentations. It's like, I'm always like, look, if you're going on a first date, man, you're not going to be wearing your whole jeans and a t-shirt, right? You're going to like put on a nice dress, take a shower, shave, and look nice, right? Because it's everybody's first impression. So why the hell are
Great
you sending
analogy.
that
Yeah.
presentation out to somebody? And
Yeah,
and
it's
some
so
people
true.
don't really, which kind of blows my mind a little bit. And I don't know if this sounds like too lofty or not, but like a lot of people don't understand design. Like they don't give that much priority until like we take their presentation and then we refine it a little bit and they go, oh, well, that looks really cool, And I think just people don't really take time to understand sort of what design can do, and so that's part of the business development aspect of it as well. So yeah, and it's been fun. I mean, it's
Yeah.
been really, really great.
Oh, that's amazing. I think you could blanket that across a lot of industries too. And this is, I see this often. It's how companies are going to market, how they present, how they, reach out, how they talk to people.
Yeah,
I think design is reaches far beyond sort of, a marketing world or something like merchandise that is part of the marketing element. I think design is one of the biggest opportunities for anyone in a pitch deck, in
yeah,
any from starting point of when they reach out to someone to closing the first deal and
yeah,
beyond
yeah.
that.
Absolutely. And I just learned so much from Toby Cowan about the aesthetics of things and balance and color and typography and spatial relation. Just like everything that like uh that when I walk in my kitchen, like if it's like got dishes and stuff all over and it's too crowded, like I will not cook until the kitchen is spotless, And it's kind of like the same on the presentation. It's like if you're going to show like some merchandise or you're showing your capability and everything's crowded in there, it's like nobody knows like where their eye should go to, It's like where do they start? And yeah, there's just so much that's so much behind it that you're right. I think that that applies to any and all industries, and it's all about aesthetics. It's all about how you look. It's what your first impression is, for sure.
Yeah, so true. We're in a very uncertain time in the world right now. I think everyone could unanimously agree upon that. How do you coach an owner, entrepreneur, founder, CEO right now where just so much is in the air? Where do you start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was just meeting a group right now who's, I mean, their projections were down 40%.
Wow.
Right, that's a lot. I mean, small company, we're down 40%, and
It's
yeah, I don't know if I.
transformationally down. That's low.
That's yeah, and I don't think I have a magic wand on that. I would say that like, with this particular company, in my mind was like, well, it's a really good time to invest in business development. So let's look at that and let's tear it down and see, where the improvement is, where you can enhance. Um, can you do it 4 times faster? Can we go after? Can you better define who you're going after? So to a certain extent, in this uncertain world is maybe a good way to look at it is like try to create certainty, right? And so creating that certainty is like, hey, is our message like, am I certain that this message that I'm sending out is really what the client or prospect wants to hear? Like how certain am I that? And like the way I look, like my logo, the brand, everything else, like, do I look good? Do I really look good? Well, maybe it's time to like sharpen that up right now. I think it's just the time to like start looking at things that can maybe make a difference, because back when the business was just coming like no problem, nobody cared about what you look like, Now they do. And so I think it is just the time to really like make that investment to really, sharpen your pencil on everything you can do so that you can be more different than the other guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, everyone keeps talking about these, heydays and glory days. I started in 2007. I feel like I missed that, but maybe I didn't.
Yeah. I started I went through three like total like, up and down, and I will say like the 2008, is it 2008, right? The financial crisis.
2008, yeah,
Yeah.
early nine, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
So
never forget it.
right in that point, we had we had finished like a couple of years where things were like fantastic, just really good. We had good money in the bank, we had good people, we were growing pretty fast, and then all of a sudden the financial thing just hit, and all of a sudden it was like, you remember, it was like like everything stopped.
Sure.
But but I thought, okay, we actually we were financially, we were pretty strong. So I ended up hiring like three salespeople and spent time
Wow. And when everyone
training
else is
them,
cutting.
and just like, and I was like, let's train them better. We have the time, so let's do a better job of training them. And I would tell you the one thing that we were not good at was training. We did a whole bunch of things, I think, really well, but the one thing and if you talk to my employees, like, yeah, we brought people on, and we're just like, it was like sink or swim, and we did not have I mean, we did not have a really formal thing to do. And so like this was our opportunity, is like, hey, let's refine our training process. Let's like really give people an understanding of like how to sell creative and how to sell design and what that means, and da da da. Um, and I was like, and my financial guy was like, well, you're kind of like, this is a big investment, And I was like, I know, but like the economy is going to turn around at some point, and when it's turned around, we're going to be ready to go. And that's exactly what happened. It's like, 3 years later, when companies are back in and they have, they need stuff and everything else, like we had the capacity and the people to take it. So, I would just, that's another thing to think about is, being an entrepreneur, you can't be risk adverse, right? You have to take chances. And so if there's ways that, in times of slowness or uncertainty, if there's a way to make investments to look sharper, to hire maybe more salespeople, to train people better, do all those things that you needed to do that you didn't have time to do.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah.
Tom, how are you thinking about AI right now? It's just top of mind for I would say every industry and most people.
Yeah. It's a great question. You're like the fifth person that's asked me that question. And I think, because I'm so design centric, they're like, yeah, but like AI can do it. And like mock-ups, like can AI just like do mock-ups like that? So I do think that AI is going to have a place in our business, and certainly it's going to aid people in maybe getting to the decision, or gaining greater inspiration, maybe providing more alternatives more quickly, and how things can go. But but I don't think it's going to take away people's jobs in our business. I just I don't know. I think our business is still a people business. At least I hope it is, and I hope it keeps going that way. And because I'm so focused on design, I mean, I've seen stuff on AI, and I can tell you right now, I can look at it and go, that was AI. That looks like shit. Like,
Yeah,
that's
you
not
could
done by
tell.
a person. And so, but I would say, like, from an inspiration standpoint, it's, you can plug in like, hey, I need ideas for such and such, and they're thinking of such and such. What are some things that would come through? And there's some inspiration there that, I think can get you, um, maybe the information you need, so that when you go to the design table, you're ready to rock and roll. So I think it's going to be a good thing. Um, uh, but I think right now AI is like the wild, wild west. I think there's a lot of bias in that data that people are sort of taking right now that they don't know about. You know, It's like just because AI says it, it doesn't mean it's right and it doesn't mean it's accurate. And I think too many people are probably thinking that it's like super accurate, and there's a little danger in that, I think.
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting time, and you make a great point. Like any amazing piece of technology or transformative time. It's hey, this is a great tool. How do we use this to our best capabilities for now to enhance what we're doing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's definitely room. There's definitely room for that. My this is not a plug, but my daughter got her PhD, and part of her study was data biased. And this is like before AI, and so now it's like she's just like people need to understand that like the algorithms that were built back in the day, and they're like all these different algorithms were based on these old algorithms. These algorithms were created by white men, period. Like, so there's already bias in there, and so
For
you need to
sure.
be careful. It's really interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Tom, tell me, for someone that's thinking about venturing on their own, or maybe starting a new division or a new business, what characteristics do you think an entrepreneur needs to be successful?
That's a good question. Well, the first thing I think is that they have to connect with people. Um, and I mean like really connect with people. Like they need to be able to work with vendors, inspire employees, um, give confidence to customers, give confidence to vendors to even work with you. They just have to really connect with people, and I think that uh, and even like when I'm working with people, like there's people you meet sometimes, and you're like, we're just not quite the same. It's like
Hmm.
I don't really want to do business with that person. Then there's also somebody you're like, hey, I really like that gal, or I really like that guy. I can trust him. I can just feel it. Uh, so that I think having that connection is like a super super important thing throughout. When somebody's 90 years old or somebody's right out of college, you have to be able to connect with those people. I think that's like I would say probably one of the key things. And then you can't be risk adverse, and you run your own company, like um, uh, running a business just takes risk. And my wife would look at me and she's like, "What? Wait, we're taking out another home loan to pay a factory in China?"
Yeah,
And I
we're
was
doing
like,
what?
"Well, yeah." We're like, "What?" It's like it's
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
It's like,
Obviously, yeah.
and so there's those kinds of things where it's like, hey, you know what? Like I think like if we invest in this person, not only as a person are they really good, but like they're really smart, and I think they could take us places. So like, and they're smarter than me. So let's hire them, and they put a six-figure salary on there. It's like that's risky. So you just have to make sure that you're comfortable with making those investments, because they're investments, and just like anything, sometimes investments might be the wrong one. But hopefully, if you do your due
Yeah, for sure.
diligence, the investment's going to make sense. So I think that's to me that's really really key. And I mean, for me as an entrepreneur, like what got me out of bed every single day was I felt like I was making a difference. Like having these employees, like I just felt so responsible for them, providing a great environment for them, making sure that they were learning, and yeah, I mean, it just was such a gratifying thing. And so I think getting gratification out of helping others, um, and not having an ego, like you just can't have an ego to have a successful company. I mean, I can tell Chris, you do not have an ego. I can just tell. I mean, we all have egos. You have to have an ego, but like you can't have an ego
Yeah, I
where like
understand
you,
what you mean by that.
right, right, like you have to hire people that are smarter than you, that have a different perspective than you, where you can be open, um, and give them the autonomy to run the business, I think that's really, really important. So kind
It's
of
like
rambling
fine line
on, but I would
between
just, there's like,
no, but
three or
it's
four
like
things.
confidence and
Yeah.
arrogance, right? It's that middle spot that like,
Yeah.
being, having, ego enough to give yourself, to take on the risk, to have the confidence, but to be also humble enough to say, yeah, this person I brought on knows a heck of a lot more than me and can take the company in different spots, and doing that with a lot of people, surrounding yourself with brilliant people.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you have to have self-confidence, which I think is, that maybe that's the ego part, right? But like, um, when I've talked to CEOs, they're just very confident in themselves, but confidence and arrogance are two different things, like you said, right? So, yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's a really, really key thing there for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And always,
Great. I appreciate
like,
you sharing those.
there's like, and you've probably been that, like, there's always going to be hard times. It's like being married. There's always going to be hard times, and there's always going to be great times, And just because your wife doesn't like you right now, it doesn't mean that you're going to get a divorce. It just means that your wife doesn't really like you right now, and
That's great.
it's gonna be fine. And there might be times that you don't like your wife right now, but like it's gonna be fine. But you actually respect the marriage, and you've made that commitment, and so you're gonna just power through, and it is what it is, and that's how people stay married for
still love
65
each other,
years.
but at the moment you don't have to like each other.
Yeah.
It's wisdom right there, Tom. That's what that is. I have one more question for you. Is
Sure.
Take me back 20 years. What's one piece of advice you'd give to young Tom in his early career?
Well, I'll tell you the one thing that just sticks with me, and I say this to my kids, is don't be in a hurry. Like, there's no reason to be in a hurry. And to put some context behind that, I was in such a hurry in my life. Like, I was like, couldn't wait to get out of college and get a job, and then couldn't wait to get a job, and then couldn't wait to be the $1 million producer. And it was just like I was just working so fast. And my mom was in real estate, and she was always like, you seem to be working really, really hard. Like, have you enjoyed life much, And so, and she always kind of enjoyed life. So I think, it is smelling the roses along the way a little bit. But, I tell my kids, I'm like, look, you guys, like, barring cancer or anything else, you're going to live till you're 100 years old. Like, there's no hurry, So, like, take your time. If you're in a bad job, just stay there for a little while, hang out, and just don't be in a hurry. I think it's the biggest thing. I was just in too much of a rush when I look back on things now, and that's kind of where I am now. It's like I'm just trying to decompress, relax, help people, and I'm just, I would say that I'm in a really good spot in my life because I feel like I've made a great impact with Catalyst and the employees that were there. We had a wonderful thing. I have a great family, wonderful wife, been married, and I love this business. I see other people that are retired that, like, they don't know what to do. I'm like, well, God, man, I'm having a great time knowing what to do, and I'm doing all the things that I like, and not all the things that I don't like. I don't need to worry about cash flow. I don't need to worry about performance reviews.
Without all the risk now.
I don't have any risk,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's a long answer, I think, is, just don't be in a hurry, man. Just take your time, be methodical as best you can, and just take life as it comes.
That is beautiful advice and experience here, Tom. There's a lot of wisdom there, and again, you just have this wonderful, relaxed, wise vibe about you. So the clients you're working with, they're lucky to have you. And I'll say myself included, it's been, again, an absolute pleasure to get to know you more, to be part of this group that we're both coaching in, and again, just a ton of great experience from your story. So I'll make sure we include a link to your consulting company, reference a couple of the other things we mentioned today. But I want to thank you again. Really appreciate you making the time to come on and share your story today, Tom.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks
All
again.
right. See you, Chris. Bye now.
See ya. Bye.